General Hospital spoilers for Monday, September 8th, reveal that Jason Morgan's rescue mission will fail while missing Scout Quartermain is located. Jack Brennan will also sound the alarm. So here's what GH fans can expect. Ava Jerome will appear tense as she tells Christina Corinthos Davis that they must deal with this right away. A crisis will arise and Ava will do her best to deal with it. In the meantime, Molly Lansing Davis will respond to Cody Bell's 911 message. Cody has been calling and texting, so Molly will eventually realize there is an emergency and demand answers over the phone. Scout, who went missing from camp, most likely ended up at the Quartermain stables. Cody will look after Scout until she can be picked up, allowing him to repair some of the recent damage to Molly. As Alexis and Willow Tate continue to deal with Scout's disappearance, they will wonder where she went. It won't be long before Molly calls with news of Cody finding Scout at the stables. Anna Devane will work with Harrison Chase and Dante Falconeri at the PCPD to identify some key suspects. Chase will speculate on some possible connections in this case during the investigation meeting. In Brennan's office, he has just cornered Colette Moreau with a gun, threatening her and demanding answers about who she really works for. Colette will do her best to reach an agreement with Brennan, but he may not be in the mood to negotiate. Whatever the case, Brennan will eventually make an urgent phone call and shout that their agent's cover has been blown. Brennan will be concerned that Vaughn and Jocelyn Jacks are already dead, but he will continue to work hard to save them in the event that they survive. Jocelyn will attempt to manipulate an employee at the Five Poppies Resort. Jocelyn will question whether this job is worth their lives, and may warn that the WSB will retaliate with deadly consequences. Now that Jason has entered the lab, he plans to make a promise to Britt Westbourne. Jason will assure Britt that he will not hurt her and promise to get her out of there. Unfortunately, Jason's rescue will be thwarted as new dangers emerge. Britt may inform Jason of Jocelyn and Vaughn's captivity, but rescuing them as well as Britt will be difficult. According to General Hospital spoilers, there will be more twists at the Five Poppies Resort, so don't miss out on the chaos. CDL is the place to go for great General Hospital spoilers, news and updates, so make us your go-to GH source. Sunny meets Diane at the Café Sherry. She knows Drew was shot. Is she defending him, Carly, or Michael? He actually called her to discuss Judge Heron and Drew's claim that she was bribed. Diane notes that Heron was always a fair judge, which is why she was surprised when she gave Michael full custody, implying that she may have been bought off. Sunny implies that Jen Sidwell may be responsible for her murder. Who is Michael's alibi? Michael, who is visiting the hospital for routine blood work, speaks briefly with Liz about Drew and Willow. Drew has been told that he is critical but stable, and she has been keeping an eye on Willow. While waiting for his appointment, Michael reads Lulu's article about Drew, and notices the photo of Drew taking body shots off Jacinda. He recalls going to the Port Charles Grill, and lo and behold, the blonde woman he was looking for the other day, and who serves as his alibi, is none other than Jacinda. She informed him that she had recently returned from a dream vacation in Australia, because she had run out of money. Lulu's got questions. Lulu approaches Willow to discuss Drew off the record, and whether she knows who would want to kill him. Willow notices Michael across the street and remarks that Michael and his father are dangerous individuals, and Drew has made a number of enemies. Liz later checks in with Willow, but Felicia interrupts. According to Felicia, Martin has appointed Willow as Scout's custodial guardian. Felicia says she can refuse, but Willow is eager to take the girl, remembering the custody agreement she and Drew signed before the wedding. Nina arrives at Portia's office, only to hear bad news from the doctor. It appears that Drew will survive. They discuss how strange it is that Drew died an hour after they spoke at the bar. Nina reveals she has an alibi, Willow, which Portia clearly does not believe but describes as a fortunate coincidence for her. Nina points out that her hatred for Drew is public knowledge, whereas Portia's is private, which is fortunate for her. Lulu interrupts, hoping to get a statement from the doctor regarding the rumor that Drew targeted Stella. Portia refuses to comment, except to say Stella is an excellent employee. Lulu then brings up Drew, but Portia makes no comment. Another setback for Alexis and her family at Alexis' home. Molly goes to family court to try to get Drew's restraining orders lifted so that Scout can stay with them. After her sister leaves, Christina tells her mother that bringing Scout here is a bad idea because Rick could be tied up with a ball gag in his mouth. Alexis claims they don't have many options. Molly soon returns with bad news. Willow has been appointed Scout's guardian, and the restraining orders remain in effect. Alexis fumes but decides to pack a bag for Scout because that's all she can do. Alexis leaves and Christina admits to Molly that she said some nasty things to Willow, so she doubts Nurse Tate will let Scout see them. Back at the hospital, Liz invites Willow and Scout to stay with her, which Willow accepts. Alexis arrives with a Scout's bag and informs Willow of the restraining orders Drew had issued to her and Scout's family. Willow had no idea, and Alexis cries, saying she trusts Willow to look after her daughter. In Portia's office, she and Nina both insist that they are not responsible for Drew's death. They are astounded when Jacinda appears at the doctor's door. What will happen to Colette? Jack is sick of Colette's nagging, and has had her relocated to the Algerian offices. Anna listens at the door as Colette explains that shipping her out does not change the fact that he lost 2 agents, and she will file a report with his boss. After Colette leaves, Anna storms in and asks Jack if one of those agents is Joss. Jack claims the operation encountered a glitch, but he believes the mission will be completed successfully. Jack shifts the conversation to Drew being shot. He claims Carly was with him when they received the news and that she remained with him throughout the night. Anna questions why he summoned her here. Jack claims he has changed his mind about calling her, and does not want to add to the burden she is already carrying by knowing information she cannot reveal. It appears that the entire point was for Jack to give Carly an alibi. Anna snaps at him, saying she doesn't like being used and that he now owes her. Will Joss and Vaughn die? At the Five Poppies, Vaughn and Joss are tied together in their small room. He wishes she had run when he jumped the guard. Joss realizes she blew the opportunity and missed her chance to warn the WSB. Vaughn is more concerned that she might die. She wonders if he would have truly sacrificed his life for hers. We don't receive an answer. Jason returns to the resort, and Pascal is delighted to see him, offering him his old room. Jason asks if Greta is still present, and Pascal confirms that she is. Jason enters his room and is immediately shot at by an unknown man. Jason kills him and disposes of the body in an undisclosed location, most likely his bathroom. He arms himself and walks out. Back in Port Charles, Colette is in Jack's empty office, telling someone on the phone that the code they were given for the safe does not work. Pascal proceeds to inform Joss and Vaughn that the code they provided him did not work, and they are about to drown in a boating accident. He says, "Bon voyage." Meanwhile, Jason enters Britt's room and discovers that she has hidden a note for him, detailing where to meet her and providing him with an entrance code. Back in Jack's office, Colette is still on the phone and appears to have been directed to search Jack's office for any information about Dalton. She discovers nothing and informs them that they must rely on someone else to provide them with what they require. If she was speaking with Pascal, this seems like poor editing unless we are to assume he called her back. In the final moments of the show, Sonny asks Diane to get him information on Heron and Sidwell, but she can't because Jens is also a client of the firm. She says he needs to get that information on his own, and quickly because the bribe will be discovered, and everyone will suspect him or Michael. At the hospital, Michael finds Lulu and inquires about the sex worker mentioned in the article she wrote, as he needs to find her. Portia and Nina are unsure of Jacinda's intentions. She needed money and thought they could assist her because they were friends. Willow tells Alexis that she adores Scout and will take excellent care of her. Felicia interrupts again, revealing that Lila's kids has called and Scout is missing. Molly scolds Christina at home for speaking so loudly. Molly then receives a call from Cody but ignores it. She sets down her phone and misses his 911 text. Obviously, Scott has gone to the QS. Pascal informs Vaughn and Joss that, unfortunately, it has been determined that the two of them are still useful, so they will live for the time being. Brennan arrives at his office with a gun, arrests Colette, and demands she tell him who she really works for or else. Finally, Jason goes to the location Britt specified, which is her lab. The wind howled through the dense forest, bringing the sharp bite of an early autumn chill. Jason, a 14-year-old Boy Scout with a mop of unruly brown hair and a thirst for adventure, had gone missing for nearly 48 hours. His troop, the Pine Ridge Scouts, had gone on a weekend camping trip in the vast wilderness of Blackwood National Forest, which is known for its rugged terrain and unpredictable weather. What began as a routine hike along the Eagle Trail quickly turned into a nightmare when Jason, who was always curious and a little too bold for his own good, wandered off the path to investigate what he thought was a deer track. His absence was only noticed when the group reconvened at the trailhead, and by then the sun had dropped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the pines. The scoutmaster, Mr. Brennan, a grizzled former park ranger with a gravelly voice, had immediately raised the alarm. He was aware of the forest's dangers, hidden ravines, sudden drops, and the occasional black bear that wandered the area. The group had been trained for emergencies, but nothing could have prepared them for the crushing realization that one of their own had died. Brennan radioed the local ranger station, his hands steady but his heart racing, and within hours, a search and rescue operation had begun. Volunteers from neighboring towns, park rangers, and even a few off-duty firefighters joined the search, combing the forest with flashlights and calling Jason's name into the night. The air was thick with tension, with every snapping twig representing a false hope and every rustle of leaves a potential clue. Jason, meanwhile, was far from the trail, huddled beneath a rocky outcrop as the temperature dropped. He had been confident at first, certain that he would find his way back. However, the forest had a way of twisting around you, transforming familiar landmarks into strangers. His small backpack contained only a half-empty water bottle, a granola bar, and a thin emergency blanket that did little to keep the cold out. His scout training kicked in. He knew to stay put once he realized he was lost, to save energy and make himself visible. He'd started a small signal fire, carefully tending it to avoid starting a blaze in the dry underbrush, and tied his bright red bandana to a low branch. But as the hours passed, doubt set in. The forest was vast, and he was a small boy in its infinite expanse. Back at base camp, the search team faced their own set of challenges. The terrain was harsh with dense thickets and uneven ground impeding their progress. Drones were deployed with infrared cameras scanning for heat signatures, but the canopy was too thick in some areas, making the technology ineffective. Brennan, who had seen too many searches end in heartbreak, refused to succumb to despair. He organized the teams with military precision, assigning grids and making certain no area was overlooked. However, as the first night progressed into the second, whispers of doubt spread among the volunteers. The forest was known for swallowing people whole, and time was not on their side. A breakthrough occurred early on the second day. A ranger noticed Jason's red bandana flapping in the wind, a stark contrast to the forest's muted greens and browns. The discovery caused a rush of adrenaline throughout the team. They converged on the area, calling out to Jason as their voices echoed off the rocks. Jason, weak from hunger and exposure but alert, heard the distant shouts and summoned the courage to yell back. His hoarse and faint voice helped the rescuers find him. They discovered him curled up under the outcrop, his face pale but his eyes filled with relief. The team burst into cheers, wrapping him in a thermal blanket and radioing the good news back to base. But the rescue wasn't over. The outcrop was nestled in a steep, rocky gully, and getting Jason out safely was not an easy task. The team had to navigate a narrow path littered with loose shale, where a single wrong step could send them sliding into the ravine below. The lead rescuer, a wiry woman named Clara with years of mountaineering experience, took command. She set up a rope system to secure Jason and the team, but the wind was picking up and dark clouds appeared on the horizon. A storm was approaching, threatening to transform the gully into a muddy trap. Clara worked quickly and steadily, guiding Jason up the slope step by step. The other rescuers followed, their breaths visible in the cold air, their determination unwavering despite the growing ache in their muscles. Brennan paced nervously around the base camp, his radio crackling with updates. He'd been through enough rescues to understand that finding someone was only half the battle. The forest did not give up its captives easily, and the worsening weather was a bad sign. He issued orders to prepare for the team's return, ensuring that hot food, dry clothes, and a medical tent were available. The volunteers, exhausted but encouraged by Jason's discovery, rallied to assist. Some set up tarps to protect against the rain, while others brewed coffee and distributed energy bars. The sense of community was palpable, reminding us that even in the face of nature's indifference, human connection can shine through. Jason, meanwhile, struggled to stay awake as Clara and the team made their way out of the gully. His legs felt like lead, and the cold had seeped into his bones, but Clara's calm voice helped him stay grounded. She asked him about everything: his favorite video games, the scout badges he'd earned, and even the stray dog he adopted last summer. It was a distraction, a way to take his mind off the perilous climb and the hunger that gnawed at his stomach. The team moved as one with taut ropes and deliberate steps. Above them, the sky darkened and the first drops of rain fell, slicking the rocks and making every movement more dangerous. Jason's parents waited at the ranger station, worried expressions on their faces. They had driven 3 hours from their small town when they received the call, arriving just as the search began. His mother clutched a photo of Jason from his last scout ceremony, his grin wide and carefree. His father, a quiet man who rarely expressed emotion, kept his gaze fixed on the forest edge, as if waiting for his son to appear. Brennan had spoken briefly with them, his tone reassuring but candid about the challenges ahead. They clung to his words, particularly the fact that Jason had been found alive. But the waiting until he was back in their arms was torture in and of itself. The rescue team was now halfway up the gully, but the rain was more than just a drizzle. It came down in sheets, making the path slippery. Clara called for a brief pause to assess the situation. The team was exhausted, and Jason was fading quickly. She made the decision to build a temporary shelter, using a tarp to create a makeshift roof against the rain. They huddled together, exchanging body heat and passing a thermos of lukewarm tea. Jason sipped gratefully, his hands trembling. Clara checked his vitals and noticed his low body temperature and slow responses. Hypothermia was a real threat, and they couldn't afford to remain stationary for long. Brennan felt his stomach twist as he monitored the situation via radio. The storm was more severe than expected, and the team was running out of daylight. He contacted the ranger station to request a helicopter evacuation, but the wind and rain made it impossible. The only option was to rely on Clara and her team to lead Jason out on foot. Brennan focused his attention on the volunteers, assembling a backup team to meet the rescuers at the gully's edge with supplies and stretchers. He refused to be idle, his years as a ranger teaching him that action was the antidote to fear. Clara decided to move again while in the gully. The rain had not stopped, but Jason's condition was deteriorating. She adjusted the ropes and secured them to a new anchor point before the team resumed their climb. Every step was a battle against the slippery rocks and the wind, which threatened to knock them off balance. Jason, who was too weak to walk alone, was supported by 2 rescuers, their arms locked around him. Clara led the way, her flashlight shining through the dim light and her voice steady as she called out instructions. The team's faith in her was unwavering, forged over hours of arduous effort and collective determination. At the base camp, there was a mixture of hope and anxiety. The volunteers had done everything they could to prepare, but the storm was relentless, and the forest appeared to become wilder with each gust of wind. Brennan stood at the camp's edge, scanning the horizon for signs of the rescue team. The radio crackled with Clara's voice, reporting their slow but steady progress. They were almost at the top of the gully, but the last stretch was the most dangerous, a narrow ledge with a sheer drop on one side. Brennan clenched his jaw and silently urged them on. Jason's parents, now accompanied by other scout families, stood under a tarp, their faces pale but hopeful. The news that Jason was alive had spread, and the camp buzzed with quiet relief, but no one dared to celebrate just yet. The forest was unpredictable, and the storm reminded us of its power. Some of the younger scouts, shaken by the ordeal, clung to their parents, while others assisted the volunteers by carrying supplies and providing words of encouragement. The sense of community provided a lifeline, keeping everyone together while they waited for the rescue team to arrive. The team made it to the gully's final ledge. Clara tested the path, her boots slid slightly on the wet stone. She tightened the ropes, ensuring Jason's safety, and gave the signal to move. To avoid the wind, the team inched along the ledge, pressing their bodies against the rock face. Jason, barely conscious, mumbled something about his dog, and Clara squeezed his hand, promising that he'd be home shortly. Fortunately, the ledge was short, and they were on solid ground within minutes. The team let out a collective breath, relieved but exhausted. The last push to base camp was a blur. The rain had subsided slightly, but the forest remained a maze of mud and roots. Clara carried Jason on her back for the final half-mile, her strength boosted by adrenaline. The other rescuers surrounded her, their flashlights bobbing in the dark. When they broke through the trees and saw the camp's glow, the volunteers cheered. Jason's parents ran forward, tears streaming down their cheeks as they hugged their son. Clara stepped back, her job complete, her body aching but her heart full. Brennan approached the team, his tough exterior cracking as he patted Clara on the shoulder. Volunteers swarmed around, offering blankets, hot drinks, and expressions of gratitude. Jason was whisked to the medical tent, where a paramedic examined him for hypothermia and dehydration. He was frail but steady, his ordeal leaving him shaken but alive. The camp settled into a quiet rhythm, the storm still raging but the worst of the crisis had passed. Brennan took a moment to himself, staring out at the forest that had almost killed one of his scouts. He knew they'd been lucky this time. As the night progressed, the volunteers began to disperse, their tasks completed but their stories taking shape. Jason's rescue would be discussed for years, demonstrating the power of teamwork and a stubborn refusal to give up. For Jason, the forest would always be a source of wonder and caution, a reminder of how quickly adventure could turn dangerous. And Brennan, Clara, and the countless others who had braved the storm would remember that day as a hard-fought victory over the wild.